morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. For Insightful, already up with the comments. I don't know how that happened. Usually there's a delay. What's up, For Insightful? The sun is still shining. Bitcoin is still running. Time for some Moscow time. Don't steal my lines. It's supposed to be a reveal. The sun's up. Bitcoin's running. I got proof, though. I have proof of sunrise. So there you go. Proof of sunrise. Proof of sunrise is almost a stand-in for proof of Bitcoin running. So they're pretty much the same thing. Pretty much as predictable. So now we got the YouTube delay, the regular old YouTube delay. Still says 0 YouTube. How long does it take? I'm going to time it today to find out. We're almost at a minute. There, well, it says you're not here, Christine. Are you real? Are you a real person? Thanks for coming, Christine. But it still tells me I have no YouTube viewers. I have to know if the YouTube's working. That's why I have to wait for the comments. But it always takes time. Oh, let me see if my audio is correct. Yes, it is. Okay, that's good. I had changed the setup a little bit. Not to have a different setup, pardon me. I was using some components yesterday for other stuff. There we go. But it still says, oh, there. Now the YouTubers are in. T-Dog, yo, who's actually a Mandela effect person. Your name was actually T-Dog Yo-Yo, and then the stupid CERN people with the Large Hadron Collider added a yo to your name. That's what I'm going with. You are a Mandela effect person. T-Dog Yo, right? They just smashed those Higgs boson elements a little too closely, and it added a yo to your name. That's the new mathematical equation. Higgs boson, Large Hadron Collider equals yo. Extra yo. Extra yo. Good morning from Texas. Thank you, David. There was almost a Texas story that made the fake news today. Apparently, Texan Republicans are souring on crypto. Apparently, Maiku, nice to see you. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. USA pleads guilty for spending billions on unproven climate solutions. We'll see that. There's my man, Jumper, DCS World. Good morning from Tabasco lands, soon to be BTC lands. We love it. We love it. Did I ever tell you, Jumper, that when I went to college in France, in the Alps, I knew a lot of jumpers. There was a whole bunch of folks that were there, and I remember meeting one. It was hilarious. I was like, "What'd you do today?" And I always thought my days were the most exciting because I was skiing all the time and all that stuff. I was like, "What'd you do today?" He's like, "Well, I jumped out of an airplane," and he used to do it like 10 times a day up there. Apparently, it's a big area for it. I don't know anything about it, but people love it. Louisiana will soon be full-blown BTC mining lands. I can see that. I can believe that. Good morning from Pennsylvania. Hellstew. Thanks for coming. We love all you Pennsylvanians, right? We love the Pennsylvanians. Everything's about Pennsylvania in the election. There was also another fake news story that didn't quite make my Moscow time level today, which was the campaign blitz by the Democrats up and down the ballot, they say, and they have this whole targeting language thing for all of their folks to go do the door knocking in Pennsylvania, and it's all like they have to don't say this when you're with a black person in the city, but say this when you're with a person in. Now, this is all normal stuff in politics, but seeing such high IQ people write the documents and just come out and say it was pretty funny. So, but there wasn't enough of a punchline there. So, the up and down the ballot thing's fun. I'm making coffee to have crickets, but these crickets keep crawling off the plate. Crypto Truth. Wait till you hear about the story I've got today. One of my great predictions is coming true before your eyes. The future will be certain today. You're not going to believe it. You're absolutely not going to believe it. It was one of the crazier predictions I've made in the past few years, but it's actually coming true, and it reinforces my belief that it's coming. This is the UBI cricket sandwiches. cooked in canola oil. It's here, guys. Wait until you see. You're not going to believe it. All right. I think there's enough of you in here now. We can get started. Indeed, as my man who was first up for Sightful said, we got a sunrise. It was very beautiful. It was a nice one, but it depleted very quickly. I don't know the red. You don't know how to predict this stuff sometimes. I think humidity has a lot to do with how beautiful the sunrise and sunset are. Sort of. That's why they're very quick in the winter and hardly any color. You can get some nice ones, though. I shouldn't say none. It's just much slower, much quicker. Summer, it's slower. And today the sky is not so humid, so the color just depleted immediately. So I couldn't even really get a good one. The sun is just coming up in this one, but it was pretty nice. I got some good vitamin D from the sunrise this morning. I try to observe it every day. So there you go. So the sun is up and Bitcoin's running. We're doing great. We're doing great. This is proof of, it is proof of something. I can't remember. I'll read it to you guys later. This is the Hemi folks that are doing some Bitcoin stuff. This is a swag t-shirt. I love the swag t-shirts. I love the good cotton swag t-shirts. You know? So this is one of them. So there you go. So we got the sun up. We got the Bitcoin running. Let's have a coffee. Talk about what else is going on. As you all know, we like to start our day with the fakest news we can find. What's happening in Moscow time? We begin every day with our weather report. What is going on with the heat? It's bad. It's so bad, guys. We have all kinds of heat news today. First of all, again, you're not going to believe it. I mean, I don't even know how to comprehend this. It seems like there's been thunderstorms in Europe for 3 or 4 days straight. Bloomberg here, because they're asking the most important question: extreme weather, climate change, or bad luck? I don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. But indeed, I got bad news for you Europeans. You're going to need that umbrella again. You got thunderstorms. Don't play soccer, or it's so dangerous. I'm going to even use the ridiculous word for the sport, football. Don't play football today on a pitch. They call it a pitch, not a field, because you're going to get zapped by lightning. Okay, so stay home. It's as dangerous as the heat. Be careful. There's thunderstorms. They're bracing. The Mediterranean is. If I was in the Mediterranean right now, I'd be like this. I see them. I see them. The thunderstorms are coming. So that's what will be going on. I'm glad I'm not there. Phew. I'm not over there. Thunderstorms. We've also got this. A wild week of U.S. weather includes a heat wave, tropical storm, landslide, flash flood, and snow. This is all happening in America. Thank God it's not happening around me. I don't know if I would survive this weekend. The D.C. area taking aim at 100 degrees today for the 6th time this summer. D.C. This, I don't know the numbers. I haven't done the research, but I can't even imagine if there have been 6 days above 100. Now, I used to live a little north of D.C. in New York City. But, you know, heat islands and who knows. My memory of living and spending summers in New York City were, you know, some people say they were more than 6 days above 100 and it was normal, right? I don't know anything about it. But what I see here in DC, 6 whole days above 100 degrees. I mean, we thought we were in trouble. But now when I see these numbers, now when I see it's been six days above 100 degrees in Washington, D.C., whoa. I mean, you know, some people in America call D.C. the South. And I say, hold on, it's the north of the South, okay? It's not really the South. It's the north of the South. So you're stretching your logic if you say it's in the South. Right? Not really. What side of them were they on the Civil War? Right? That counts for more. They were in the north. Indeed, record heat is closing out August in the Midwest. East city by city forecast. Heat index is over 100 for St. Louis is going to be in trouble. Chicago, Detroit, Nashville is going to be 100. I was just in Nashville. It wasn't 100 when I was there. They must have been just running their air conditioners ever since. They must have just been putting out emissions into the air ever since. So of course, it's been a month more of emissions. Of course, it's at 100 now. If this keeps up, all the emissions that we've had since I was there in July, and now we're at 100. We were only at like 80 when I was there. It's 20 degrees in a month with those emissions. I mean, Nashville could be gone by October at this rate. I mean, it could be gone by October. At this rate, it's done by October, guys. Nashville, canceled, out, melted, gone. 200 degrees, I predict. It's in big trouble. 200. Now, this is bad news too. Scientists, they're down in Chile, and that's not ironic, right? They're down in Chile, and they question if Antarctica has hit a point of no return. So remember we were talking at the beginning of the summer, when is it going to end? Go to Antarctica, guys. They're just heading into summer. I mean, it's a point of no return. I think that if it's 200 degrees in Nashville, it's going to be like 300 in Antarctica. Point of no return is right. But this is the most important thing, all right? This is the most important thing. Because I've said, we've got all this stuff and what's going on with it right now. But now finally, the New York Times in this next story has finally done us the favor. Because it's like, I can't look at the truth. I can't look. It's so bad. The thunderstorms in Europe, and they got the heat. It's 100 degrees. And then they had the Antarctica. What are we going to do? Well, we finally had the good work done by the New York Times. Heat deaths, everyone. This is the big trouble here. They've doubled in the U.S. in recent decades. All right. When is recent decades? We don't know. But recent decades, the study found the finding comes as a late August heat wave bears down on a significant part of the country. Heat deaths have doubled. Okay, they've doubled. Now, they don't tell you how many there were and how many there are and over what scope, right? You'd think you'd go in the article and you'd see, like, what's the percentage? What's going on, right? It didn't matter. Okay, they still did the study. And the study found, right? Not the actual numbers and proportions. The study found that the heat deaths have doubled, right? The rate of death has doubled. So we're in big trouble. Now, I got to be honest, right? Someone yesterday thought I was mocking climate science, and they said that my climate science has a lot to be desired, and they're not going to watch the show anymore. So I'm going to start trying to bring you the good news about this stuff, because it's true. If I don't bring you the good news about the environment, that person is totally, we're not all doom and gloom here, guys, right? There's good news. It's not just about the heat deaths doubling, right? We've got good climate stories now. I'm not just going to keep being negative, right? Because it made me look into my soul and say, I'm being so negative about the weather, and I'm being fearful, and I'm spreading fear. So I've got to do better myself, and I've got to find those things that we're doing out in the environment to help the environment. So I'm so happy to bring to you guys today some of the most important things that are being done, and the news is helping us get there, right? So they're helping spread the word. Look at this. This climate campaigner has been appointed to the National Portrait Gallery. So they're going to pick the pictures you go see when you're in the portrait gallery. Now, you can be there and be like, what does looking at art have to do with climate science? Guys, they were out throwing cans of tomatoes in all the paintings and stuff. They got to replace them, right? Because that's where they were protesting. So they got to put up, and guess what? There's an extra advantage. They can put up pictures that inspire us. They can inspire. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to inspire us, right? So I feel like she's so good at what she's doing, right? She previously lobbied to end the fossil fuel art sponsorship. So imagine art was getting sponsored by fossil fuel companies. What a bunch of jerks, right? Trying to pull the wool over your eyes. I'm not going to let that happen. And nor is she. She's going to come out and she's going to put the most inspiring pictures you've ever seen. And you're going to go, oh my God. She might even put a portrait of Greta. Maybe it's even a portrait of Greta being unhappy. Imagine how that would make you feel to go to the London National Portrait Gallery and there's a portrait of Greta and she's not happy. What will that do? I mean, it's going to change the world, right? So I can see right now how picking art in a national portrait gallery and being a climate lobbyist it's a match made in heaven. Okay, it's a match made in heaven. But there's more happening today, guys. It's not just that. It's not just that we're actually making strides here with the art. And she's not going to pick things that they throw cans of tomato soup on, right? Like the Mona Lisa and those ugly paintings that made by old people, probably had a lot of emissions, right? It's not going to be like that anymore, right? They're going to pick beautiful ones, and it's going to be Greta, and it's going to be the happy people that are sad because of the environment, but they're going to be happy if we just listen to their feelings and take them seriously. It's going to work out. So it's not just her, though. This is not the only good news of the day. We have even better news. This is a big deal, right? Birth strikers, they're called. So we got these ladies, right? Meet the women who refuse to have children until climate change ends. So what is going to happen is these ladies are not going to have kids, right? And they're going to be they're going to take that energy they would normally put for the children and to raise them and all that, and they're going to put that energy and they're going to put it right into climate action, right? They're going to go check out the portraits at her gallery. They're going to tell you about the portraits at the gallery. So these are like heroes, right? I'm looking at her, and I'm saying, these are really healthy people. And I think they're doing great things and they're onto the right track, right? But there's better news, right? So look, someone send this to the fella who said he can't watch the show anymore because our climate stuff has something to be desired. This is what is desired. We want this. We want more of these climate activists having these great jobs that are really so vital and important, and then she's going to do a great job. And then her not having kids, it's great. It's great. She's going to put that energy to something productive, like getting the emissions down, right? Like making sure it doesn't become 100 degrees. Imagine if it's 100 degrees again next year in DC. We're done. Now, there's even better news, guys, right? They're experimenting with something. There's a big, big change coming. If Jevi is here, who's here who likes food, right? We heard about earlier talking about the bugs, right? So I heard you're having trouble with your bugs on your plate with the coffee, right? Good news is, and I told you this would happen, right? I told you it was coming. I told you the UBI was going to mix with the bugs and the canola oil. And sure enough, over in UK, if you can go to the portrait gallery, you can hang out with a birth striker. And right after that, you can get for free, right? Public will get bug for eating insects under government-backed drive. Scientists hope to encourage increased consumption of meat alternatives amid fight to cut emissions from agriculture. So they're going to be giving them their welfare bug sandwich, right? So the welfare bug sandwich is going to be amazing. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be for anyone who wants to sign up and fight climate change. If you fight climate change, you get the bugs, right? These are bugs. These are perfect. I've seen people put French fries in their hamburger. There's no difference. They're crunchy. It's going to taste the same. It's going to be like a little French fry hamburger, right? A little hamburger and fries. It's going to be right in the one unit. It's even going to be better than the hamburger and fries because they have to separate those normally. Kentucky Fried Bugs, yeah, we could do that. That might happen, right? Kentucky Fried Bugs, that might be one of the things. So we're finally going to get what I said was coming inevitably, right? I said to you, if you're a Bitcoiner, you might not even have access to this kind of nutrition, right? I don't know if you'll be able to buy it for Bitcoin. I can't imagine. Like when I go to the Bitcoin farmers markets and stuff, they're just selling like raw milk. They're selling steak, emissions, fart meat, right? It's just a bunch of fart meat. So what I really want is a Bitcoiner to come and start selling the bug sandwiches because I'm worried they're not even into it. So I don't know if your Bitcoin will ever buy you one of these beauties, right? I think you're going to need a CBDC, UBI, US trash token thing if you even want one, right? And that's what it looks like. It looks like the government is going to give them a government-backed drive to eat them bug burgers with the crunchiness, and you're going to be great, right? Free bug lunches. Exactly, Richard. You're going to get the free bug lunches. So people are like, UK is going downhill. It's going to shit, right? Come on. They're getting free bug sandwiches, guys. Free. Government-backed. People say government-backed money. It's not worth, Bitcoiners, you hear them say it's not worth anything. Well, what if the government-backed money is backed by government bug sandwiches? You didn't think of that, did you? Bitcoiners don't think about this stuff. That's their problem. Echo chamber. It's an echo chamber. Okay, Bitcoiners, echo chamber. You don't want it, right? So that's what we got for that. Now, here's another piece of good news, right? So I told you I was going to be talking about how we can fight these things today, right? So no more doom and gloom about the rain and the thunderstorms and the 100-degree heat in August in DC, all unprecedented. We've never even heard of these things. We're in unprecedented times, guys, right? That's why we got to talk about solutions too, because I'm not here to ruin your morning with negativity, right? So we got this, right? We got this. But guess what? They're also letting us know that Harris is the perfect person to prosecute big oil, and climate advocates say, right? So environmentalists want the Department of Justice to hold fossil fuel companies accountable and for presumptive nominee to lead the charge. It's totally legit and normal. So as we move from the weather report here to our gaslighting report, it's important to notice that there's this great pivot and connection, right? Kamala is going to help us with this stuff. She is the perfect person, right? The perfect person. There's more. There's more perfect people around. She's not the only perfect person, right? Joe Biden is also the perfect person, guys. He is, and this is written today, right? Or this weekend. Abraham Lincoln's wiliest trick should be a lesson for Joe Biden. If you read the article, it says, like Lincoln in 1864, right? Mr. Biden in 2024 is the best placed politician to protect the Union. Isn't it obvious to you? I mean, people say he got kicked out, he's bitter, he abandoned them and all that stuff. No. He's actually the perfectly placed person, guys. He's perfectly placed. Like Lincoln was. Biden, Lincoln, they're going to be remembered the same. They're the same. It's the same thing, right? So it's great. He's the perfect person. She's the perfect person. We got a lot of perfect people. So that's going tremendously well, right? Now, you can say, what about Trump, right? What is he up to, right? Well, he's out there trying to dodge and sidestep responsibility for his role in the Afghanistan exit, right? And he's trying to link Harris to that chaos. You know how he's out there trying to link Harris to Biden? The only way you can link them is the perfectly placed people. That's what they just said. They're perfectly placed, right? That's how you link them. But he's trying to link them to chaos. Now, other people out there, the other side of it, you know, the other side of the story, right, is that he wasn't even president at the time, right? He'd already been out of office for a year when the Afghan withdrawal happened, right? And that's why that he's trying to use that as an excuse. Trump's trying to use that as an excuse. I know, I caught him. There's so many smart people out there catching him about this stuff, right? He's trying to sidestep. He was the president a year before, okay? So that's enough to have some responsibility in this, for sure. For sure. So he's sidestepping his role in Afghanistan, right? What a jerk. What an absolute jerk. He's got to fess up and take responsibility for what happened. That 13 people died, right? 13 people died, right? That's a lot. Not easy, right? And now there's this. It's not just that, right? He got indicted again yesterday, the felon he is, the criminal, right? The new indictment rocks his newly reshaped race against Kamala Harris. It's rocked. It's rocked. I mean, another by Jack Smith himself? Jack Smith, the steely-eyed wonder, the matinee idol? Jack Smith? He did it again. He's saving the republic. He's perfectly placed also. So Trump's not taking responsibility. Luckily, his campaign is rocked, right? It's rocked by this thing. So things are starting to look up. Now, you know, because of this whole thing, if you're wondering, right, the Afghanistan thing, so Trump did go to the funeral the other day for those 13 families, even though he's responsible for them. Now, Kamala and Joe weren't responsible for them, even though they were in power at the time when it happened. So they didn't bother going to the cemetery on the day. And I'm not even sure if they were invited, but Trump did come, right? And the fake news is letting us know here that it's a big problem, right? He's not supposed to do that, guys. Trump videos at Arlington stir more fallout after the gravesite visit, according to the New York Times. Jim Acosta is saying that Trump Secretary of Defense Esper tells me he's anxious to see what comes of Arlington investigation. They're investigating it, right? Bottom line, the principle is that no person or party, either side, should ever use Arlington National Cemetery or any one of the cemeteries or battlefields for partisan political purposes. So he didn't go there to take responsibility. He went there to use it as a campaign prop. Right? Federal law specifically prohibits election-related activities in military cemeteries. Pentagon officials were concerned about Trump, right? But they didn't do anything about it, right? And then you get also, Aaron Blake, the details of the dispute of the campaign aides shooting photos and video in Section 60 in Arlington National Cemetery matter. Here's what Trump did. and what the law says. So hopefully he finally gets held accountable, right? That would be great. That would be a start if he could get held accountable, right? We need that, right? How are we going to get over this if he's not held accountable, right? And now we've also got Phil Bump. Phil Bump, I guess his summer vacation is over. I've been seeing him all week, so he's back at work. He's got two really important stories you got to see today, right? Look at this. One of the defining characteristics of Trump's rallies is the emergence of an ad hoc marketplace for Trump-related merchandise. The former president is constantly expanding the ways his supporters can put money into his pocket. So they're talking about his ordinals collection, the Trump cards. What a jerk. I mean, what a jerk, right? And then you get this. The former president prefers to frame the election as his to lose. But this is what he did that was absurd, right? And I'm so glad Phil Bump pulled it out here and pointed this out. In an interview this week, he suggested that even God, because he said he was saved in the assassination attempt by God. Phil, you idiot. God's not worried. Doesn't care about this stuff. Come on, he's busy with the rain and the other stuff. Okay, so it's so ridiculous. It's just so crazy for Trump to even come to that conclusion. What an idiot. What an idiot, right? Now, our final stories of the day for Moscow time are all about the Red Sea, right? So I know they said that Kamala was the best place to prosecute the oil companies, right? So she's the best placed, right? That's what they said. She's the best placed. Now, she's got to get with it here because she's also got to be the best placed person for the following trouble. It looks like the Red Sea littoral states brace for the worst tanker spill this century because you see the oil tankers are getting hit by the drones, something we predicted here on the breakup several years ago. Now, I said an aircraft carrier was going to go down. I think one will. But the thing about the aircraft carriers is they're not going around this anymore because this would happen to them, right? So this oil tanker tried to go through it. It's not going to make it, right? And but the good news is, everyone, even though America has all these really credible, totally useful aircraft carriers, right? And everything's doing great, right? Because our military is the best for sure. And everything works and everything is awesome. But luckily, the Houthis have given us permission to bring the largest navy in the history of mankind into the Red Sea, and we're going to be allowed to tow the Red Sea oil tanker away. So I just got to thank the Houthis. Thank you, people of the Houthis. Thank you for allowing the largest navy in the history of the world permission to go avoid an ecological disaster. It's so amazingly generous and nice, and the world needs more of this kind of generosity, thoughtfulness, right? So I don't know what we would do without the Houthis right now, frankly, right? The Houthis, everybody knows they're helping everyone. They're here to help the environment, right? They're perfectly placed to help the environment. It's just like Kamala. They're perfectly placed to help the environment, right? So things are looking up. Things are looking up, guys. We got the Houthis, we got Joe, we got Kamala. They're all working together. We're going to be fine. We got the bugs coming, the bug sandwiches. I think this global warming thing, we're going to be able to solve it. So don't let anyone tell you that I'm fear-mongering with the rain and the thunderstorms and the heat. No. I'm not fear-mongering. I'm here with the good news, okay? The good news is we're going to get through this, okay? We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. It's going to be great. We got the bugs. We got everything. So there you go. That's our Moscow time for the day. Now, I do want to talk more about our incredible situation here in the, whatever you want to call it, the Red Sea, the Strait of Hormuz there, and the Gulf of Oman, and then, of course, the Eastern Mediterranean where you get out. Now, the Suez Canal was sort of a weird thing as a Canadian because it's one of the things that Canada, I guess, partook in after World War II. After World War II, mostly the Americans had just decided to take over the Suez Canal because the British and French couldn't operate anymore. They tried to go and take it back, and that's how Canada had to get involved so that the Americans could eventually just take it over, more or less. And it was sort of a big Canadian coup for diplomacy and all that stuff. But imagine right now, we're not even going near it, right? And so Armchair Warlords here says here, the fact that the U.S. Navy seems to have entirely given up on securing access to the Suez Canal, only one of the top 5 or so strategic locations on planet Earth, and nobody's gotten so much as a letter of reprimand over the strategic defeat is genuinely disturbing, right? Because it is a bit nuts that they've done this, but I don't think there's a choice in the sense that when he says it's disturbing, my opinion is, and I'm absolutely not a military strategist. I have no clue about the capacity and capabilities of most of the armaments the U.S. Navy has, and the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force. I know very little about that stuff, right? But what I do know is what people say and what I observe about the asymmetric changes in the cost of violence and the type of weapons we use, and that we're going through a major change in the drones and the remote stuff is big, right? So my prediction always was that you would see a U.S. aircraft carrier melt into the ocean when a swarm of drones just pour battery acid and shit all over it, just kamikaze the hell out of it. And it would fall apart in a very chaotic and absurd way, just like this oil tanker that we saw earlier is falling apart. Now, the reason why you don't see the aircraft carriers going in there is because they will suffer the same fate. There's no defense, I don't think anyway, against these cheap $25, $2,000, whatever they cost drones. There's just no way. And the Houthis keep getting more of them. Of course, they're getting them from Iran, right? So, but anyway, the point is the cost of violence and the changing environment of the cost of violence is something that we've been talking about here for a long time. And it's something that I've been suggesting is going to be a major factor in hyper-Bitcoinization for a long time, simply because the reason why we even built nation states in the first place, right? This idea of a nation state, by the way, guys, is not the default setting for humanity. This is a new thing, right? We had kingdoms, we had very localized areas, we had things like that, but the idea of a nation that spanned geographies and was more empire than anything is not a prehistoric thing or anything like that. It's kind of new. And the reason it was allowed to happen this way, and the reason why we ended up having nations printing money the way we did, and then we built these big bureaucracies, was because the cost of violence favored that form of structural organization and societal organization. That's what the Sovereign Individual is all about. The book Sovereign Individual is exactly about this, right? So I don't know anything about the military capacity. What I did know was enough cheap drones, its economics are just going to be better. If you can actually build a cheap drone and the cost of an aircraft carrier is $5 billion or whatever, well, it's a no-brainer. You can make so many drones for that amount of money. And if the game is just win the fight, you're going to win the fight, right? It's like that whole thing of the mathematics of you've got one sniper who never misses versus 100 soldiers who always miss, right? And how long the math is, if one soldier who never misses goes against 100 soldiers who miss 99% of the time, he still dies immediately, right? Immediately. He doesn't get anyone killed. So it's just the cost of these things that makes up the whole equation and the whole story. Now, the ability for Bitcoiners to understand the sovereign individual and what's going on is a major asymmetric advantage. I've always mentioned that our ability to predict the future and our ability to be optimistic about the future is an asymmetric advantage, a dimensional asymmetric advantage we have over the sludge people and the people who are being brainwashed every day to love fiat. Because the thing about their system is it forces you to just look backwards. You're always just looking in the past, right? It's a past-oriented point of view. That's where they get the victimhood. That's where they get all that stuff, because you're looking in the past, right? So they're very good. Well, I don't think they look at the past accurately, because the past is mostly fake, in the sense that it's as fake as the fake news, right? Our version of history and all that stuff is sketchy at best. So you get all these people who are just sitting and looking into the past and looking into what happened. And the natural thing to do is say, these people are victims and I'm a victim and that's why, and this and that and da, da, da. But Bitcoiners, of course, because we're so used to looking to the future, right? We're actually out there authoring these optimistic ideas about where things are headed. It's a much different point of view in the world of being an author of the future versus being a victim-based antagonist about what happened in the past. So, but that's really where it's at, right? It's a bunch of people who are sad about the past versus a bunch of people who are optimistic about the future. That's the actual fight that's happening in American politics and in the world. And the advantage we have, because we spend so much time predicting the future, is that we can actually do it for even little things. We can do it in the short term. We can do it all the time. No one can predict the future, so it's not exactly a 100% infallible strategy. But the asymmetric advantages it brings us and the ability to predict into the future and to know where things are going. If you do this, this will happen. The consequences of doing things. It doesn't look like they have that faculty at all over on the sludge people side. It looks like fiat people are just paralyzed with fear about the future. They don't even bother thinking about it. And I don't think they can think that far into the future anyway. We see time and time again, they're incapable of saying, well, if you do this, that'll happen, right? They're good at looking in the past and saying that happened and then they were a victim, right? They're good at that, but they're not good at even looking at small things and saying, well, if we do this, what'll happen? Look at the RFK story, right? The whole RFK thing. What did you think was going to happen? Did you think he was going to go away and forget it? Did you think that the Democrats actually believe they can treat him like shit, they can shit in his mouth, and then he'll just come up and say, oh, Trump is the worst? Of course not, right? It was obvious to anyone who's paying attention that he was not going to make friends with the Democrats after this. He was not going to let bygones be bygones. He was doing something totally different. Anyone could have predicted that. It doesn't look like they have the capacity, right? Now, the next story, the big one of the big ones I'm talking about from yesterday, is this one on unrealized capital gains, right? So everyone's talking about that, the unrealized capital gains story, right? So yesterday they tried to get one of these sludge people on Squawk Box, and he was trying to, I mean, it just was a pathetic exercise. But again, this is a person who, A, doesn't even understand the economics, but importantly, they don't seem to understand the consequences of doing this thing. So if you guys... Now, I know a lot of people don't know what unrealized cap gains are. They are for rich people who understand what's going on with the markets and Wall Street and all stuff that won't really be there when Bitcoiners fully take over in however many decades, right? But it's still an important topic. So unrealized capital gains is just an insane idea that you can tax people on the money they theoretically made, not from selling, just from the value of Bitcoin even, right? So Bitcoin... You know, the Bitcoin I got at $200 or whatever, I would have to pay taxes on the value of it today. So it would be a major pain in my ass, and it would be for many people. And the truth is most Americans will not accept it. So a lot of people talking about it, right? Joe Kernan talking about it yesterday. The guy trying to sell it is just too economically illiterate. He seems to be mentally handicapped when it comes to predicting the future. This is another one of those people that absolutely doesn't understand consequences and cause and effect. Lomez writes, these clips of Kamala surrogates going on CNBC to explain why price controls and unrealized cap gains tax are a good actually is such a gift. Total unforced era. This stuff is normie kryptonite. Cernovich says, oh my God, Kamala's team doesn't know the difference between a 1% property tax and a 25% unrealized gains tax. Now, I'm not here to laugh about how stupid and retarded they are, right? That's not the point. The point is the asymmetric advantage we have by being able to predict the future even a little bit. Even a little bit is a huge advantage. And it doesn't mean you have to get it all right, but that your mind is oriented towards authoring a better future and creating a better future is a huge contrast to just being able to be to look in the past and say, oh no, it's going to be better, right? So the asymmetric advantage we have about looking into the future and being optimistic about the future and authoring a not utopia, but a much better, a much more positive, a much more healthy version of the future is a huge, huge, huge advantage. And even Jason Calacanis gets into it here, saying this proposal is dumb. He's talking now about the rent, the mortgage thing, the mortgage subsidy for the houses, right? This proposal is dumb. He says, building new homes is all that matters. Building new homes requires lower regulations and on the margin, creative ideas like building new cities. That's Trump's Freedom City idea. That's the Citadel tech going wild, where I think, again, Bitcoiners are going to dominate when it comes to this. Trump offering the 10 new Freedom Cities idea. The competition, I've said from the minute he announced it almost a year ago, I said instantly, a Bitcoin group is going to be one of those 10. They're going to have a energy finance component to it in the middle of it, and we're going to actually win one of the federal things. One of the 10 cities is going to literally be a Bitcoin citadel. It's just crazy, right? And I've been telling you that the new cities stuff is going to be the biggest thing in the world, and I don't think I'm wrong. By the way, well, I don't know how much of this I can divulge yet, but anyway, there's a big chance that I'm running a super important, lots of rich Emiratis, Qataris, Saudis. I'm going to go to the Middle East, I think. We'll see. Later on to do one of these Citadel things. So I'm going to go meet with the people who built the line and who are already way into Citadel tech. So look out for that. That should be interesting. But this stuff is coming, right? This stuff is coming, and Trump talking about it, and even getting a libtard like this to come out and say, you got to stop. He says, please stop trying to buy votes. Please pump the brakes on socialism. Indeed, everything he's talking about here is because he is one of these liberals who understands that the grievance past thing, it ain't going to work, right? You got to look to the future, and you've got to be optimistic and positive for real reasons, though, not just like, I'm joyful about the future. You got to be like Trump, right? Or like any Bitcoiner. Trump, Bitcoiners, all these people that can say it's going to be like this in the future, because that's where their focus is on, that's where their attention is on, that's where they're oriented towards a better future, not making up bullshit about the past, right? This whole thing, even about slavery. I mean, the libtards actually believe, they believe it, 100% believe it, that only black people were slaves and it only happened in America. I've heard them say things like America invented slavery. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? Did you know that a majority, maybe not a majority, a huge portion of the original white people, not Mayflower, but that went to Jamestown and New Amsterdam, all slaves, white slaves, totally white slaves, because you could be a debt slave, a debt prisoner back then, and they sent them from the debt prisons. These were people who owed money. What's the difference? Nobody knows, right? And again, we've said it many times, the German word for slave is their neighbors, the Slavs, right? This was a normal thing back then. This is where you went to get your slaves. The Germans would go and find slaves in the East, and then they would sell them. Did you know how many white slaves there were in Rome? You think they went to Africa for those slaves? No, they were all German. They were all Gauls. They were all these people, right? They would go get the Gauls the whole time, and that's what they did, right? That's what they did. So now I'm not saying it makes the slavery experience in America better. It was terrible. Maybe one of the worst instances of slavery ever, right? As a Christian person, I'll never forgive whatever happened back then for their disgusting marriage vows. Do you know what the marriage vows were for slavery in America? Till death or distance do you part. Is there a more sick sentence you can say in the English language than that? There isn't. Till death or distance, as in your soul, do you part? I mean, really disgusting stuff. So you can't ignore the past and say it was all good, right? I can't think of a more disgusting thing in our past than that statement, right? Till death or distance. I mean, what kind of a Christian could live in a world where that's a sentence that you can speak for anyone? I mean, it's crazy, right? That's why the early anti-slavers were all Christians from the North, because they knew that sentence in particular was so aberrant and disgusting, right? And it definitely was. It's awful, right? But it doesn't change reality that there have been slaves everywhere, everybody, right? You think there was no coolies in China? Coolies? You know what those are? Slaves, right? Okay, they had coolies, and the whole Hong Kong was built with them, right? So this happens, and there's a lot of them, and it's not just one group. We've been doing it to each other for a very, very long time, and it's not great. But that doesn't change the idea that you still need people who are authoring the future versus people who are trying to find new things to cry about in the past. There's plenty to fucking cry about in the past. Plenty. And it won't go away either, right? But it doesn't really exist. It's just the past. It's gone. It's now imaginary. It's not real. It can be changed, right? We've seen that the past can actually be changed by perception. The entire quantum aspect of the observer shows that the past can actually literally be changed, right? So it's all a matter of perspective. It's all a matter of how you see it. We've seen our vision of the past change just in our own lifetimes. We never thought of this way about ourselves before, right? It's not happening. So that's what's going on, right? So that's a big part of it. So this capacity that we have to look into the future that Jason Calacanis is wishing the Democrats had right here is a major advantage that Bitcoiners have. And it's a major thing we can do in order to win this fight, right? Because we got to keep telling people where things are headed. And these examples are just great, right? So yesterday we had these more lawfare stuff, right? We had the Brazilian Supreme Court try and say to X or Twitter, you need to have a representative so we can sue him too. This is that really creepy guy, and he actually served the notice on Twitter, so it's cute, right? It was high tech. So this is the same Brazilian thing. Then you get OpenSea that got served a Wells notice yesterday from the SEC. So the OpenSea, if you don't know, I knew those guys from the beginning. I worked with OpenSea at the beginning. I minted a ton of shit. We were one of the original collections at CoinDesk on OpenSea. In 2018, we did our year, like our top 10 people. We made NFT cards about them. We hired a cool artist. I think Jameson was one. Adam Back was one. We're really beautiful cards that we issued, and OpenSea was our marketplace. And so I got to know the team there at the beginning. Super cool guys. Always loved what they did. Very interesting, energetic, optimistic people, right? And so when you hear all these libtards going on about crypto for Harris, now they're taking away the NFT market, right? There's not going to be any, like, anyone, again, who can't predict any crypto libtard right now who's saying, if they just get nicer to us, we're going to be great. It's not real. That's their inability to even look at the future. They're still focused on the past. That's why when you look at them and you're like, how could you be so dumb? They want to destroy your industry. You're not going to have any money. They're not even looking at the future. That's it. They're just not even looking at the future. It doesn't matter. It's not a part of where they're getting their opinion. They're trying to get their opinions from the past. And that's the major problem there, right? So that's why you get these folks doing that. Now, when you continue to think along these lines of not being able to predict and what's going on, and that's why I've been saying for a long time that the Nicole Shanahan piece, right? Having Nicole Shanahan around and having Nicole Shanahan talk about health, just like RFK has got us all to talk about health. Like one man, no one was willing to talk about. Dave Smith said that today, right? Or yesterday. No one was even talking about seed oils and health and lifting weights and having high testosterone and not eating round. I didn't even know about the Roundup thing. I didn't even know about that, the glyphosate and all that. I learned all that from RFK only recently. Now, I've been understanding that our food was poisoned for a while, but it was kind of a guess, right? Now, when RFK came along, I've become a lot more educated on what's going on. I've learned a lot. And of course, my view is always towards the future. I mean, I write science fiction books. I'm an extreme case of thinking about the future and trying to manifest it and project it into reality on Earth, right? So it's the thing, for example, that I am most respectful about Mormons for. Mormons have this perfect, by the way. If you didn't know this about Mormons, here's an amazing little thing about Mormons. And it's a slight deviation from Christianity, but it's one that I really enjoy, which is they call it an act of consecration, which is to make heaven on earth, right? To try and make it better here. Now, I get it, right? Earth is part of a whole system. And if you believe in the Christian Bible and heaven and where you can go, and it's a place for your soul to mature and for you to seek salvation and redemption to live in a better place, right? So the focus isn't necessarily on making heaven on earth, right? It's to make yourself a better person. So I still acknowledge that that's probably the best way to go for me personally. I don't know about everyone, but I still like the idea of consecration that the Mormons use, which is to make a better place while we're here. And I think it's very noble idea, and you see it in their actions and you see it in what they do. And it's a reason why I'll always defend my Mormon friends, because I've never met a bad one. You know, it's a crazy thing. Like Jesus lived in Mexico and all that stuff. I don't know. I'm not a big Book of Mormon fan either. But this consecration thing, just great, right? It's a really great worldview. And again, it focuses on the future for their people. They're trying to make a better place. And that's a really good way to orient yourself. No Mormon is sitting around going, what happened? Why are the Black Mormons not doing as good as them? And they're not thinking about the past, right? They don't really have a past, so they don't get caught up in it, right? So they're a pretty new religion. But when I go to Utah, well, I've never been to Utah, but when I meet people from Utah and when I'm thinking about Utah, I guess you can say, or watching things from Utah, you can really see that, they're not bound by the same racial troubles that a lot of other Americans are. You should think of the Mormons as like a separate kingdom inside of America. And it was actually Mark Twain who used to talk about that. He made a trip to the Mormons in his time. So his first gig, Mark Twain, out of being a riverboat pilot. So when he ran away from the Civil War, because there was no more riverboat piloting, his first job was a riverboat pilot, right? And so when he quit that job, so I'll do a little quick tangent on Mark Twain. Mark Twain not only invented stand-up comedy as we know it, he invented stand-up comedy as we know it as a result of a travel book he wrote about going to Hawaii. He went to Hawaii, wrote a hilarious travel book or a travel article that he sent back to the San Francisco Chronicle. And then he invented something which was, okay, there's a bunch of people doing these fancy salons and intellectual things. And what did Darwin say? And that was the whole late 1800s. And what's the new word on electricity and all that. So these salons and private parlor theater type settings where you go and talk about high-minded intellectual stuff was already an established business model. But Mark Twain did something a little different. He went and charged people a nickel, but he just told jokes. He made fun of everybody. No one had ever thought of that before, right? So he goes on stage and it's a hit. He's great comedic, natural comedic timing. One of the jokes that he made that made people at the time laugh so much was all the Hawaiian women swam naked. So he was out and he starts telling them he's trying to save them. They haven't heard about Jesus yet and how he saved their soul. And so that's why they're naked and they don't know, and they really need clothes. So he's out on the shore with all these naked women and he's trying to tell them, hey, I'm here to say it's so sad. You don't know that I'm here to save your soul. Come give me a closer look so I can give you clothes. So he's trying to lure these naked women in to help them, but he's really just trying to, obviously have a look. So it was a hugely famous and popular thing. And then what happened is the New York Times sponsored a trip for him to Europe. And he did the same thing. He would go to Europe. Before Mark Twain, everyone who went to Europe to marvel, right? Because it was the center of the world. And Americans would go and they would say, why can't America be this beautiful? Why are our churches not as nice? Why can't we have as many literary heroes and all that kind of stuff? So he goes over and just laughs at them, and that no one had ever done that before. He went over and brought the center of the world with him. No American had ever done that. Americans, like I said, when they went to Europe, they were going to the center and wondering, when are we going to have culture? He goes and he invented it, right? He invented American culture. He went and just mocked them all. He mocked the princes. He mocked everybody. He would write newspaper articles back to America, and the same comedic simple folk that would laugh at all of his funny jokes thought it was the greatest thing they'd ever heard in their lives. It was just so funny. And it was. You should read it. It's called The Innocents Abroad. It's a long compilation of his, daily, weekly stories. He actually went with a group of, maybe it was Mormons or Amish. He went with a whole group of religious something or others, Quakers. And so they take this river boat across the ocean, the steamboats or whatever. He gets over to the other side and just spends months in the Mediterranean. He meets the Tsar of Russia. He meets Napoleon III. He meets everybody and just tells a million jokes, makes fun of them all, forgets. He would play a game when he would get there, when they would try and explain things to him about how old it is. And he would play dumb all the time. Oh, really? He didn't know anything. But Americans loved it. And then when he came back, he wrote his sort of autobiography, which is the same kind of style, comedic. It was called Roughing It. So it was about his time as a riverboat pilot straight through to becoming this comedian who did the Hawaii piece. And through it, he does his what do they call it again? His wagon trail trip. So he did a wagon trail from the Mississippi to San Francisco to go be a gold miner. And so he cataloged all this trip, and that's where he went through Utah and met the Mormons. By the way, I've actually thought one day of almost sort of being inspired and copying Roughing It, but for early crypto, because of the gold mining thing and all that. Like, he was part of the gold rush that made San Francisco. So he's got a really cool story about all this. Anyway, the point is, the Mormon thing, because they look into the future and because they think about these things, it's a massive advantage, right? It's a massive advantage. And it's partly why it's such a anomalous, healthy society within America, I think, mostly, right? They still get tricked by the food and stuff like that, but that'll get better. But then let's go back to that piece about making heaven on earth and how important it is to have people who are thinking forward, not backwards. So Kamala not being a mother, it's a problem, right? And being contrasted with, for example, Nicole Shanahan, who is just thinking about motherhood, just thinking about the future for her children, and is totally focused on that. She's not saying anything about what happened in the past. It's literally what's going to happen in the future. Now, when you see those contrasts, and you see this following contrast, right? You got the daughter of merchants, so the girl trying to throw Trump in jail, right? It turns out she's been paid something like $8 million or something like this, right, from the lobbyists and all this stuff, while her dad is threatening to send Trump to jail. She's been paid by all these folks. So now Jim Jordan has subpoenaed her. Now, it's a fucking stupid subpoena. It's probably not going anywhere. These are weak, stupid people, mostly, right? They fuck up all the time. But nevertheless, having it out there that she made all this money while all these mothers are struggling to pay for their stuff, right? When motherhood and everything about kids is becoming harder, more expensive, more troublesome. And you compare that to what Nicole Shanahan is saying right here, saying, what is MAGA really? Some of on the left like to paint it as a basket of deplorables, a group of reprobates. The media fuels this narrative, spreading what I've come to learn are easily debunked hoaxes, like the false claim that Trump praised neo-Nazis in Charlottesville as good people, the accusation that Trump incited an insurrection on January 6th, also false, and the assertion that Trump called illegal immigrants rapists and murderers, again false. But then you meet MAGA supporters in person, and it quickly becomes clear, at least it did for me, that the vast majority care deeply about our country's security and prosperity, want a safe and healthy environment for their kids, and desire a government that is efficient and works for them, not the other way around. What is wrong with that? Maybe it's time for a former Democrat turned independent to dig a little deeper into what MAGA truly stands for and break it down to voters. Also, Sherilyn is based, isn't she? Love her. So indeed, we're getting this contrast now where you get someone like her simply talking about building a better, healthier future. And when you look at this woman making all this fucking money trying to stick Trump in jail, the contrast just becomes so juicy and delicious. Not only that, just look at the contrast with Kamala's own background, right? Speaking of looking into the past, not that it's vital, but you still have to know the context of stuff. Cynical Publius came out with this, and it's actually incredible what a fucking loser she is. It's crazy, right? Look at this. I'm about to author a truthful, brief 21-point biography of Kamala Harris. The following statements are objectively and verifiably true. If you are a Democrat, you can decide to hate me for this, but you cannot deny the factual accuracy of what I'm about to say. Kamala Harris is the offspring of two foreign-born college professors, and they provided Kamala a prosperous childhood ensconced amidst the ivory towers of academia. Kamala Harris's mother comes from the Indian Brahmin caste, which sits atop India's horrifically backward and oppressive caste system. Her father comes from a family of wealthy Jamaican slave plantation owners. Kamala Harris's father was an influential Marxist economist. Kamala spent her formative teenage years in Montreal. At no time in her formative years did Harris ever live what is customarily referred to as the African-American experience, or for that matter, the American working class experience. Indeed, I told you before, someone made a comment yesterday, what was her neighborhood where because it was so beautiful. Emma Jo Morris sent out a picture or a video of just like what it's like around the school. I'd say they're 2 blocks away and they're coming down from the hill. So it wasn't quite an honest edit. You could have found nothing sketchy. It's still in a good area and it's on a cliff. So there's nowhere to go otherwise. But you could have doctored the video to look worse than it did and still been accurate. So I'll mention that. But it's still the area, right? It was 2 blocks away. But for miles from that school, for miles. Okay. They're sort of at the end of that neighborhood, Westmount, but there's a cliff behind it. So they're not, if you go down the cliff, it used to be when I was young, scuzzy and shitty. It's not anymore. But there's a cliff there. So her thing is on top of the cliff. And then it's just for 5 miles, mansions, beautiful grass. I mean, just the nicest neighborhood in Eastern Canada by far. And so 40 years ago, it was unequivocally the richest neighborhood in Canada. Now there's a couple in Vancouver or Toronto that are probably the houses are more expensive and stuff like that. And probably a few richer people. If you're super rich in Canada, you don't live in Toronto anymore, though, because that's for working, it's to make money. It's not really where you go for quality of life. Montreal still has some super rich because the quality of life is better. And if you don't need to make money here, this is where you'd rather live, mostly. And if you speak French. Kamala Harris failed her bar. Kamala Harris rose to political prominence in California thanks to support of a much older, married, and influential Democratic politician, Willie Brown, with whom she was having sex while he advanced her career. As California's Attorney General, that I don't mind. I mean, I'm not trying to hold this against her. It's just a fact, right? I don't care about the sucky stuff, right? That's her business. She's an adult. Nothing wrong with that, honestly. As California's Attorney General, Kamala Harris knowingly engaged in numerous unfair and unethical legal practices that wrongfully denied many unjustly incarcerated Black men their freedom and liberty. As a senator from California, Kamala Harris ranked by many nonpartisan political analysts as the most extreme leftist in the Senate. Running as a Democrat presidential candidate in 2020, while being incredibly well-funded, Kamala Harris nevertheless polled at the bottom of all major candidates and was the very first to withdraw. This was widely perceived to be a function of her unlikability and her inability to offer cogent campaign positions of substance. which is why it's going to be so funny that she needs they actually described, how they're doing the interview together, Walz and Kamala Harris. Someone actually described it as her support animal, that Walz is her support animal. So I just think it's great. I just think it's perfect that a woman needs a chaperone for the interview. It's just great optics. It's just amazing, right? Joe Biden explicitly stated that he hired Harris because she's a black one. Thus, it is entirely fair to label her a DEI hire. Kamala Harris, as vice president, has had an unusually high staff turnover rate exceeding 90%. The media is extremely hard-pressed to recount a single accomplishment of Harris. So these videos that you see out there, they're actually some of the most persuasive. I think they should keep doing these. These are the ones where you ask a Harris supporter, can you name one policy? Now, I know the videos are doctored, but that's very persuasive. You know why it's very persuasive? The fear of being a stupid idiot is much greater than the fear of, the desire, the want to be in the Kamala team, right? So remember, I always talk about fears and wants. Rationalization after the fact is just something we use to pretend that we're intelligent and rational. Truthfully, we're all motivated by our fears and our wants, and then we sort of backfill with logic the decisions we make based on which impetus was more powerful. Usually fear will trump want, right? Depending on the nature of the fear. But in the case of Kamala, if you frame it as you're an idiot if you follow her, right? And you don't know why, then that will trump the fear of being called an idiot, and being on the stupid team is stronger than the desire to be on the good, righteous team, right? So the idea is here that those videos that they have when they go to these women, right, and they say, why do you support Karen? And they're always like, she's a woman, she's a woman, she's a woman. They never can name one thing, because there isn't really, right? So they try, they can't, they just say usually it's because she's a woman. But if you make this into a compilation, you can start to underline how retarded all these people are and stupid. And it becomes so cringe and embarrassing that it's actually the most persuasive thing they can do. Trump just whining and complaining and being funny, nowhere near as effective as showing a bunch of sludge people try to be logical. There's nothing more embarrassing than realizing in real time you're just a sludge person, right? So when you see all these girls go, I'm a sludge person, I'm a fucking NPC sludge person, and they realize it, and they don't outwardly say it, but you can tell by the body language. It's embarrassing, right? So the ones that look the stupidest are the ones they should make the videos for, right? So the next we've got anyway, there's all these ones, right? But I'll read you the final conclusion. And it's pretty great, right? Kamala Harris is the privileged child of racist immigrant college professors. She has all but no connection to the American working class experience in her formative years. She rose to prominence by having sex with much older, which I don't mind, I'm not criticizing her, powerful Democrat politician. As a government lawyer, she engaged in corrupt practices that discriminated against black men in prison. And as a senator, she was the most extreme leftist in the Senate. She got chosen as VP because of her skin color and genitalia. And as VP, she has had no notable accomplishments other than to ignore the advanced dementia of her boss. She used extortion to grab the presidential nomination for herself, and her campaign currently consists of hiding from the press while having no verifiable campaign platform. So again, the point here is that by having these optimistic visions of the future, and by being optimistic about where things are headed, and by having our focus on the future, we're able to strategically maneuver around these Luddites much better. The Luddite thing is exactly what they predicted in the Sovereign Individual. It would be the smart people who can predict where things are headed versus the Luddites who are too stupid and too focused on looking in the past and being victims and grievances, to the point where they've short-circuited their capacity to look into the future. Now, the perfect example of how this plays out is the next one, right? And this is our last little story for the day. It's this one where RFK is being blocked from leaving the campaign trail, right? We talked about it yesterday. But what I didn't think of yesterday, and a lot of people thought about it yesterday after me, and this is the prediction thing, right? So what's stopping the Trump campaign from doing this to Biden? If they're going to keep RFK on the ballot, why can't they keep Biden on the ballot? And I think they're going to. So if this continues, you're going to get Biden on the ballot in a bunch of states. And here again, the reason why they've done this, the reason why they've done this, the Sideshow Bob rake to the face constantly again and again, is because they literally can't predict the future. They're not even looking in that direction. They thought this was so clever yesterday, right? Oh, I'm going to fuck him over, right? But meanwhile, they forgot or didn't strategically imagine that the Republicans could do the exact same thing to Biden. I think you're going to see Biden on a couple ballots because it's not that clear. I think he's still the candidate, right? I don't think the Zoom call just cleared it all up. So this is going to get funny. This is going to get real funny. And again, you've got someone like Tulsi and that whole female thing again, where you're going to get these women that are thinking about the future. You've got Nicole Shanahan only thinking about the health of her children. You're going to get all these people thinking about the future, projecting that, talking about that. And the optimism piece is where Bitcoiners excel. We've had ideas about the future, and we're all oriented towards thinking about the future. That's why when you hear socialist Bitcoiners come around, they're still sort of looking in the past for inspiration. That's why it's a dead end for Bitcoin, right? It's a dead end. These people are a dead end for Bitcoin because they're still not looking in the right direction. They're trying to fix old problems. It's not the way to do it. Build a better world and those problems will go away, right? You can't just sit there and try and fix each and every one of them as they are, as much as we'd like to get rid of them. Like I want to live in America where everyone has healthcare. I do. Why wouldn't I want to live in that? But I want the healthcare to be good, and I don't want it to be costing the state a bunch of money, and I don't want everyone to have to pay taxes to do it. There are options outside of that that are much smarter and that Bitcoiners have already talked about. So we're getting there, right? All right. I went a little long today, guys. I got to run. Pardon me. I shall see you all Monday. No, not even. I might not even see you Monday. It's a long weekend in Canada and in the States. Labor Day weekend, end of summer. I'm going to my county fair tomorrow. There's a really good chance I'm still out there Monday because kids, fun, everyone's out there. It's sort of our homecoming in my hometown. It's when everybody comes back. So I'll see people that I haven't seen in years and all that stuff. So my bet is I'm going to be not around Monday, but I'll let you know, because that is sort of the last day of the whole thing. And I got a whole tradition, by the way, that I do on Labor Day Monday. You know, the Rob Reiner, who's like a deep state actor, the guy who runs propaganda. Well, he made one of the best movies ever made, as far as I'm concerned, which is the movie Stand By Me. And even written by Stephen King, believe it or not. But it's such a great movie, and it's set on Labor Day weekend with a bunch of boys, 4 young kids about to start high school, leaving their elementary school life. So it's the day before they go off to the school, and they go look for a dead body. And it's just a neat story. And so for years I used to watch that with I had a friend who loves that movie as much. We used to watch it, and I always try and go for my last swim in my beautiful Brome Lake on the weekend. So just so I know always the last time that I've gone in my lake. And so we might do that. So we'll see if we're around Monday. There's a chance we are, chance we're not. I'll let you know. Okay, team, be good. Have a great weekend. Peace.